Good morning folks. It's October 21st, still morning here. I thought I had a good idea of what I wanted to say, and of course I start this thing and I freeze up. But I'm Dr. John Taylor Kent. I'm a retired corrections psychologist. My expertise is in psychology, clinical and in industrial organizational, and neuropsychology and family systems. You can go on the internet, find the website for my old show. I'd love to be on AM radio again, but I'm not willing to pay these outrageous fees to be out there. And the way they set it up, the radio stations, they make everything anyway. But if I were on the radio, I'd love it. For one, it's live, you're on the hot seat. And the other is, I actually could probably get people to call in and make reports and educate me, educate everyone on certain key aspects. At this point, I think the most important thing to realize is that we've got a lot of great men out there contributing things, contributing ideas, information. Cliff Eye's one of them. Dan Bongino's another one. As far as live AM radio, talk radio, I think he's probably the best out there right now. I like listening to him. I like listening to the local guy in Phoenix, James T. Harris. He's pretty good too. And there's not much else I like listening to. The guys that took Rush Limbaugh's slot are absolutely horrible. They're full of themselves. I don't want to hear about them. I don't want to hear from them. And then these other guys, Sean Hannity, great American, it's a great jackass. I have to change the station. And it's that way with Mr. Beck too. Glenn Beck, there's no way in hell I'm going to listen to him again. He is so sophomoric and so condescending. He thinks he's great. He's not. He was okay back when he was on television, but his radio show kind of sucks. And of course, there's Alex Jones, and he's pretty good. But he makes us conservatives he makes us look bad. He made gun owners look bad. And Rush Limbaugh was probably the greatest, sure, I understand that. But he also should not be replicated. I don't think he ever voted, to be honest with you. I think that's what the scuttlebutt is. He never voted. He was a hypocrite. He failed to discuss the real enemy among us. And that's what most of these guys are guilty of. Now, Dan Bongino, once he figures out who the enemy is, I think he'll tell. No problem. Cliff Eye knows who the enemy is. He's got great videos on it. Go listen to his video on the Khazarians, the history of Khazaria. And then James Preston of Veterans Today, he has an excellent production, a great video on the Khazarian Mafia. So those are all very helpful. Cliff Eye said that Washington, D.C. would become progressively less relevant to our lives. And I think that's the way we're going to have to go. We're going to have to go defensive. We're going to have to defend our very lives. And those people in D.C. are a bunch of idiots. I just censored myself there. They're a bunch of idiots. In case you're wondering, I'm petting my dog. Come on, up here. Might as well make a show, huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. Oh, yes. Oh. There, they got a good look at you. Yeah. Okay. You're not quite a year old yet. Off. Off. No. She's so demanding, and she's very pushy. And she's got drive like you wouldn't believe. When I try to let her out, she's got to go put her head and her nose against my hand to help it go open faster. She can't just go through the door gently, but I know she loves me because she slows down and gets gentle with me, and she certainly doesn't. I think it's kind of rough for her to go my speed. She's real fast. She scared up a coyote out in the desert. She was twice as fast as the coyote, and she just wanted to play. He's kind of naive, like most of you are. You don't recognize your natural enemy. You want to play with them. You think they're the same as you, and they aren't. I think we have to increasingly ignore all of this crap in D.C. And I also think that they won't give us an honest money, a constitutional currency, but we could give it to ourselves. And I think that we ought to start getting used to carrying dimes and quarters, silver coins, and using those in our transactions and exchanges and getting away from their debt notes. For one, the debt notes are going to have no value in short order. And the other thing is that nobody knows what the real market value is of anything today. Certainly not on silver and not on gold. As a matter of fact, Mr. Putin's probably going to be establishing the only hard currency on the planet here in short order if he keeps going. I do hope he keeps going, because I think that the existential threat he and the Russian people are facing, the rest of us are facing and just don't know it yet. These evil ones are really bad. We're illegally occupied by a foreign power. They superimposed another jurisdiction upon us. They pulled a series of frauds, and they've been doing this for so long, over such a long period of time, intergenerationally among these families, that it's hard for us to detect, very hard for us to accept, almost impossible to sort out and understand. The main things that you need to know are, it's so bad you can't do it on your own. I can't do it on my own. But I got good news for you. You and I were not designed to do it on our own. Israel means he who rules with God, not he who rules against God, or he who rules instead of God, but he who rules with God. And Yahweh's pretty explicit, and we aren't supposed to be doing much away from him or much separate from him. And as long as we press in and build that relationship, we'll get the rewards, we'll get the proper guidance, we'll make the best decisions. And you do that by sitting on your butt and reading your Bible. You don't have a Bible? Buy one of mine. It's the best Bible in the world in modern English. It is an improvement upon the original King James Bible. It's called a proper name version of the King James Bible. And the reason it's the proper name version is that in 275 BC, thereabouts, Ptolemy II in Alexandria, Egypt, translated the Bible from Hebrew and Aramaic into Greek. So he produced the Septuagint. And when he did it, he translated the name of Yahweh out of the book, except for maybe one spot. And that's in the book of Psalms. And we have Yah, capital Y, capital A, capital H. Yah. Just like the German answer for yes, the German word for yes, Yah. And that's there in the middle of the Bible. Slip through one time. I circled that sucker in red ink and dog-eared that page halfway across, because it's the only place in the Bible I found it, and I want to know why it was in there. Turns out it was in there because it was the nickname, the short name for Yahweh, Yah. Well, Ptolemy II took that out, took out the name of Yahweh. What I don't understand is why he did it. Was he a good guy or a bad guy? And that's what we Bible readers are debating today. I'm leaning towards he was a bad guy, and he was hiding the name of Yahweh, hiding the name that we're supposed to call on, and obscuring things. I think he might have been an Edomite, a descendant of Esau, who had taken a Canaanite woman to wife in violation of Yahweh's orders. He ordered about 5 times, don't you intermarry with them. And the Canaanite was a descendant of Cain. And Cain was fathered by a fallen angel named Gadriel. What I want you to do is get used to the idea of cutting this federal government down. It is the enemy, and it doesn't matter which party's in charge, it's still going to be the enemy. They are hurting us. They've been hurting us. They certainly don't represent us. They don't report to us. They have no oversight. They do whatever the hell they want, and they're doing wicked things on the planet and around the earth. There's already been skirmishes over in Europe. I'm certain of that with our boys. But you're not going to hear about it. I would love to see real statesmen at the helm of this nation again. I'd like to see somebody that's equal to the Russian ambassador as far as statesmanship, qualities, and character. Because that guy thinks circles around our jackass that we have down there representing us. Yes, Russia's a great nuclear power, and they're probably going to use that on us. And by the way, we gave them those nukes. Don't kid yourselves. Chase Manhattan Bank lent them the money to build them, and the Lend-Lease program gave them everything. And I do mean everything. And it was all ferried on planes, smaller planes than what we have today, but ferried on planes nonetheless, propeller-driven planes, through Alaska, through my state. We need the second American Revolution. Now, before you go thinking you know what that was about, you don't. Under Vattel's Law of Nations, the king is required to defend his subjects, his people. And when he fails to defend them, and should he abandon them, then he is no longer king. He has set them free. And that's exactly what the king did to the colonies. He failed to defend us, and the French were attacking us. And the French had their Indians attacking us. And we appealed to them several times. We didn't want to leave the king's protection. We didn't have a navy. The French had a navy. They were using their battleships on us. We had nothing compared to that. We turned to the king. He turned his back on us. And as a result, we defended ourselves and we established our independence. He granted us our independence. Then he changed his mind after he saw that we could withstand the French-Indian Wars. He decided he wanted us back. And it was too late. He decided to attack us. And it became a war of self-defense. We did not rebel against the king's authority. We did not rebel against British rule, against rule by the English. We did not do a violent rebellion, a violent revolt. Yahweh doesn't bless rebellion. Remember, the angels rebelled. There's no blessing for rebellion. However, Yahweh does bless self-defense. And just to give you an idea of how defensive the war was, the king had his advisors gave him some really wicked advice. And the advice was, and they wanted to genocide us back then. The genocide has been consistent throughout history. Large part of it comes from England to this very day. Eugenicists. Those people. It's where that stuff come out of. It's where we got it. The king followed the advice of his counselors. And they told him, put a bounty on their heads, bounty on their scalps. When the Indian produces a scalp, pay a bounty. And then for the long blonde scalp, long blonde hair, they put a triple bounty. They wanted our women. Why? Because that's the most important thing the country has. Your mothers. Giving you children. Real economic stimulus. The economic stimulus package, if ever there was one, is a loving wife, and doting children. There's nothing greater to motivate a man to honor than to that. However, on all other long-haired scalps, how gruesome. The king placed merely a double bounty. They weren't worth as much as the blondes. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? Well, there's particularly good reason for that. You see, Yeshua, who you call Jesus Christ, Yeshua the Messiah, our Messiah, was blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Now, I never had blonde hair. Certainly don't have it now, don't have much hair at all. And I don't have blue eyes. We're not going to talk about that. And how do we know that he wasn't dark and swarthy? Because all those people from the Middle East are dark and swarthy. Well, that's the later generations. It's not the original stock. We know he was blonde-haired and blue-eyed because of 2 eyewitness accounts. And all I can think of right now is one. And that witness was given to the letter to Caesar in a report from Pontius Pilate. And I would think Pilate would know what Jesus looked like, since he appeared before him more than once. And he observed him first in public. And he wrote a letter to Caesar describing Jesus. He said his golden beard. Hebrews wore beards. It was golden. It was blonde. And his eyes the color of the sky. Blue eyes. I think Pontius Pilate is a good witness. A good eyewitness. Don't you? He had to condemn this man, or at least pass him on, to satisfy the leaders of the Jews at the time. He did his best to avoid it. Pontius Pilate's wife admonished him, don't put this man to death. Do not do it. I had a dream. It was a bad dream. Don't do it. And he didn't want to do it. But the crowd would rather have Barabbas go free, rather have a murderer condemned to death go free, than an innocent lamb. Oh well. Folks, our forefathers knew who they were. They read the Bibles. The Bible was the primer. I think that's how to say it. The reading primer. And that's what we all learned to read from. They read the Bible right from the get-go. And as a matter of fact, college entrance examinations were really stringent. And a man was required to sit down and was given a task. And that was, he was to take a chapter in a particular book of the Bible and translate it. And he was required to translate it from the old Hebrew, Aramaic, into Latin. And then, after he completed that task, he was required to translate it into Greek. In other words, he had to be prepared for his education. He had to understand that ancient dead language of Latin, through which so much of our medical profession is ruled, and that ancient language of Greek, through which another part of our medical profession, the pharmacopoeia, the pharmacy, is done through the Greek language. And so a literate man could study the old books in their original language. They wouldn't have to have anybody else translate it for them and distort it. And by the way, the typical fellow sitting for the college entrance examination was age 13, 14. Started college age 14 or 15. We weren't held back then by a horrible prison system called the public school, government schools. In the little red schoolhouse, we were mainstreamed all in the same room. The teacher ran the room, the whole class. And in that class were different ages, different abilities, different grade levels. And you weren't graduated based upon your age and with your cohorts. You were graduated based upon tests of mastery. And when the teacher gave you the test and judged that you were ready to be graduated to the next level, you moved up. So you didn't move up just because you went to class and attended, and you weren't considered above average, like all of us were by all of the teachers and parents, because it's what sounded good, it was politically correct. You had to absolutely pass the test. And you didn't have to graduate high school. Why? Because a 6th grade education was so good back then, that's all a man needed. They taught you reading, writing, and arithmetic. And they gave you good skills. They didn't hold you back. My grandfather had a 6th grade education. His wife had a college education. I know you don't want to believe me. Well, if you look up Ione Griffin, Kent, you'll see my paternal grandmother. They used to have her listed on Mount Holyoke's website, but for some reason they took that stuff down. I guess the fact they were educating women, and of course we cannot represent women as being educated, as having any sort of chance. We have to represent women as being oppressed, downtrodden. Look, folks, the team was pretty good in the 1800s. Men and women stayed at home together on the farm, raising the kids together, doing everything together. It was a rock-solid team. Both parents were always available. And then the Industrial Revolution came on and ripped fathers out of their homes and kept them out for long hours. So he became an absent father. We need to build the American family again. I'd like to see the government get out of the marriage business. But anyway, I'm going to keep this short because I've exercised this morning. I've been pumping iron, and I'm going to go eat. I've earned it. I've deprived myself of my favorite food long enough. Since I've exercised pretty hard, my body should be able to do okay with it. I have to watch myself. I've got plenty of medical problems going on. Not as healthy as I look, and I know to most of you, I'm grandpa. I see the comments, I read them. Okay, fine. I'm at a good level to be a grandfather, that's for sure. I've got a couple of detractors out there too. I guess everybody has their haters. I'm not going to be exempt from that. I'm not going to let it hold me back or slow me down. My job is to inform you so that you can defend yourselves. Not rebel, but defend yourselves. You need to read the Constitution and hold these jackasses to it. And it says in there that money shall be coined gold and silver. And that's all that's authorized by the Constitution. And they violated that. They violated that with the Federal Reserve. They've enslaved us all. They've stolen all the property here. We used to have patented land. Land that could not be attached. It couldn't be taxed. It was your land. We used to have private ownership. But we don't have that anymore. We have a dictatorial government. I mean, if we really believe a man owns his business, then we need to nose out of it, butt out of it, and let him hire who he wants. Because it's his business. He owns it. We have no business dictating to him that you're going to hire a specific gender, a specific color, a specific type. It's his business. So either we honor private property and allow the man to do his best to take care of himself and his property, or we're not a free land. The same with renting out. Rents are a new world order concept that comes from the bankers that rule over us. We didn't pay rents. We owned our property, and we had patented land titles to it. That came from the Kent family, from the county of Kent in England. And that's what was intended. So you've really lost almost everything at this point. They've stolen it all. They used to give you title to things. Now you only get a certificate of title. So there's another layer, another barrier to ownership, to private property in this country. So we're very much along the lines of the communists at this particular point. There are 3,000 to 5,000 troops being moved at this moment to a nation, a country in Eastern Europe that I haven't been able to identify yet. We know they're moving 3,000 to 5,000 troops. And if you find out about those, put it in the comments. I want to know what kind of troops. I want to know where they're going. And so they're going to make this war go hot. And the sad thing is that Vladimir Putin has already said he will use nukes if he has to. And so we're going to drive him to using nukes. And in which case we will use nukes in return. In which case he'll actually pull out the big bad ones and we'll be sending nukes across the world. They're dumb enough down in D.C. to do that. Don't you realize they're pretty much insane? They're addicted to power. They have compulsive disorders. They can't stop themselves. Look at President Pedophile in office. He can't stop himself from molesting the kids on stage, in public, or even touching the adult women, smelling their hair, touching their breast, fondling them. Creepy Joe, creepy as you know what. I mean, this guy is creepy, and this news media protects that. And parents out there waking up to the fact that they're grooming your children, well, they've been grooming us all along. It's just that you finally realize where you're at, and your children are being groomed. And to date, already, 269 teachers have been arrested for sex with their students in the public school system, K through 12. And guess what? It's mostly women. Females having sex with little boys. Wow. And you're going to tolerate that? Man, I don't think I'd even be suing over that. You know, I really think that there is such a thing as justifiable homicide. And one of those is protecting your kids. It's like that guy who went after the fellow who pimped out his daughter and killed him. He hasn't come to trial yet, but by God, if I was on the jury, it would be jury nullification. Screw the law. The man did the right thing. Hell, let's buy him some more ammunition. Oh, hold on. I'm just kind of going overboard with that statement. He's not going to be a danger to anybody else. His daughter is dead. He's already lost his daughter. The man who was responsible for that, he's dead. We should be glad for that. We should celebrate this guy's... Boy, talk about an honor killing. And what about that one fellow? A man gets off the plane and is walking through the airport, and he does a headshot right there on camera in front of everybody. It's justifiable homicide. We used to have it when a man discovered his wife in bed with another man, you know, in the act of infidelity. He used to be able to take lives on the spot, and it was considered justifiable. I don't recommend it. I don't like it much. You know, I certainly wouldn't want to be witness to that. But you have to understand that that's the natural order of things. And when people steal from other people, what's the natural order of things as well? Well, when your courts aren't working for you, when the police aren't showing up, when your prosecutors refuse to prosecute them, let them go without bond, you have to rise up to the occasion, man. I hate to say it, but you might as well shoot, shovel, and shut up. We are going to come to that. They are going to reduce us purposely to the levels they reduced the South Africans to. You know, the place where the farmers are getting murdered every day these days, the country we interfered in, the country we set up to take down, and sadly, they are down. And that's really something that I'd love to see South Africa rise again. It will rise again. I'd like to see the South Africans victorious. And this time, not invite those outsiders into the country for anything, not even for their labor. Just get rid of them. You're better off when you live among your own kind. You're better off among your own people. Everybody understands each other. They understand the social contract. They know what's expected of them. There's a lot less crime. And okay, let me take this into account for you, because you need to understand this. You jackasses out there who support the Second Amendment, who think you have a Second Amendment, you don't. I have it somewhere here, pretty handy. Read the Second Amendment, because you don't have a militia. And without militias, you don't have a Second Amendment. And in case you're wondering, if you have a Second Amendment with a proper militia, you have men to police your ranks. You have men to police the public. That's how we did self-rule. We didn't need professional police. The militia was informed of the crime, and they went and they took the action. They would arrest the person, deliver him to the sheriff, and the sheriff would hold him and take the person so accused before a judge. Common law courts are quite a bit different than these courts we have right now. A free man was considered owning all of his time, his labor, and you couldn't take him in custody without compensating him for his time and for his labor. So you had to post a bond to imprison him. And so if the sheriff approached you and said you were under arrest, you couldn't say no. That would be a crime. That would be resisting arrest. You would have to say, I accept. Where's the bond? In other words, who's putting up the money to compensate me for the fact that I'm going to be in jail? And when I'm found not guilty, I have to be reimbursed for my lost labor, my lost time. You cannot deprive me of that. I own that. I own my labor. So I'm all for defunding the police. But let's establish the militia first. And I don't mean State National Guard. I mean the militia. Every able-bodied man. It varied in the original colonies and the original states. Some states were age 20 and above. Others were 21. I don't think they held fast to those guidelines. I know that the requirement was you had to possess a rifle. You had to possess a long arm, a short arm, a pistol, and a short sword. Plus you had to have at least 200 rounds of ball and powder. So it wasn't like there was any gun control back then. You were required to own the arms. You were required to maintain them. You were required to serve. And you were required to stay a member in good standing in your community. Now, pay particular attention to that point. You had to be a man in good standing in your community to be in good standing in your militia. Because if you weren't, then you probably weren't well protected. You weren't highly regarded. You weren't considered as a contributor to society. You were considered a burden. And so you had men over you, in charge of you. So you did not go off half-cocked. You checked in with your superiors. You cleared things with your superiors. You made sure you were in agreement and you were doing the right and proper thing, the best thing. And if your superiors had trouble, they would go up the chain of command. And then if you needed help, you'd bring your fellow militia members with you. And typically you did that. And should the sheriff be the one committing the crime, you'd take him into custody. However, that was pretty rare. But should the sheriff need to take someone into custody, he had the militia backing him. The militia was so powerful that they took control of the state legislature in New Hampshire. It's called the Incident at Exeter. And there was a piece of legislation which the legislators had failed to do their duty on. And they were all waiting for this legislation to get done so they could know what the law was, how they conduct themselves. The state was putting it off. So, the militia surrounded the state legislature of New Hampshire. And they basically made an announcement inside the building. Gentlemen, you are sequestered until you produce this law, until you get this business done, until you address it fully. No one is leaving. And I think they went as far as to say no one's entering either. So you're not getting anything delivered to you in terms of food, beverage, or anything. And I hope they had an outhouse on the grounds right there that they could use, because they weren't going to be leaving any other way. And they stayed there all night. And the legislators did their business. The militia held them into account. The militia held them to doing it. Now, each of the original colonies, part of their constitutions, had the militia in there. And it stipulated able-bodied man 20 and above, able-bodied man 21 and above. Okay, that was the requirement. And the states out west never got militias, most of them. And they're debtor states. They were created after we became a debtor nation. I think that's about enough. I'm going to go eat. I've earned it at this point. I gave my puppy dog a break. She's sleeping at my feet. I hate to disturb her, but she's happy where she is. And I got to put her back in the kennel. I got to train her up more and get her used to wearing this vest. She's not ready to be out in public service yet. I'd like to give her a lot more time than what we have. I'd like to give her another year, to be honest with you. My first dog, I gave him about at least 5, maybe 7 years before he was in service in the public. And he was wonderful. He really was good. I miss him dearly. He made it past 15 years. Not too bad for a dog, especially since he was part Great Dane, part Black Lab. Wonderful dog. This dog is smarter. She has a lot more drive. She needs more attention than I've been able to give her. I'm just trying to spend as much time with her as I can so that she'll learn what I want, and she'll start just listening to my regular speech and regular language. Because my last dog understood syntax and proper English, you didn't have to do short sentences and short commands with him. You could talk to him as a human being practically, and he went and did stuff. Incredibly noble animal. Majestic, intelligent, never started a fight. Scared other dogs. He wanted to intimidate, but he didn't start any fights. He finished them. Except for one dog got the best of him. She was real fast and in a dog park, a leash-off park. Unfortunately, the owner didn't even stop to attend to things there. I hope that never happens again. Look, folks, we've lost our country. We don't have any control. We're going to ship our troops over to defend a non-NATO country. We're going to send more money over there. We're going to broaden this war. Israel's coming in on the side of the Ukraine. Israel's going to dominate the Ukrainians' airspace. And as a result of that, we're going to be defending Israel too. And then in the middle of all of this, since the Iranians decide to stick their nose into it, and I really loathe those mullahs over there and the crazy ass stuff they talk about when it comes to sex with animals and sex with children. And my God, what twisted minds. How barbaric. No, they aren't equal to us, and I'm not going to hold their standards equal to my own. Oh, hell no. Keep them out of my country. Don't get me wrong. Some of the Iranians that are over here are pretty nice people. I've known quite a few of them. Folks, we need about a 20-year moratorium on all immigration while we sort things out here. But the problem is right now, we've got World War III starting up, and it is going to go nuclear. So you can expect to take some hits here on the homeland, in the mainland. Yeah, we may have a better military, but I don't think it's impervious. And I think right now, with those hypersonic missiles they have, that we can't stop those. And so I think if I'm Vladimir Putin and I want to defend Russia, I'm going to use them. And Biden is busy talking about it, getting us used to it, because they want them to use them. The evil guys, the bad guys behind the scenes want us nuked. You have to understand, nothing's by accident. It's all planned out. So they are going to reduce us. And we aren't going to be a superpower when this is over. We're never going to be a superpower again when this is done. That's according to the seer of South Africa last century. He said the Civil War would start in the middle of our nation. I think it has started, with those riots that were perpetuated by the establishment. The bankers did that, by the way. That's another story. But the bankers did those riots. They did Black Lives Matter. They did the Antifa. They do all that stuff. It's all controlled. It's all set up in advance. All psychological operations. Now, I managed to get through this without repeating the previous 2 strikes. I know they'll probably take me down at that point, and I'll be upset by it. But, I really don't want to feed this beast. I mean, I don't want to give them such good content. I think this is good content. If you do, please give it a like. Give it a like, period. And if you really like it, hit that link down below. Go buy a large print Bible for your family. Get one for yourself. At least have it handy. You'll thank me in the future, because you're not going to be able to buy one in the future. It's going to be that bad. So you need to get these while you can. And the price is very cheap. It will be going up. It can go up at any time. I'm not in control of that. I will accept my stipend gratefully, graciously, and that's all there is to it. And I really would like to up my game right now. I'd like to get a little bit bigger rig. I'd like to have a little bit nicer tow vehicle. I'd like to have more money in my pocket so I can put it in my fuel tank and burn it and travel. I'd like to get out and see more of this nation while I'm still able-bodied. Yahweh bless.